Hey guys, my name's Steph, I'm Botanist Cool. Today we're talking all about dice etiquette and tabletop RPGs. As always guys, a huge thank you for your constant support with Quest Helper. Quest Helper is a series all about the fun and creativity and sometimes the etiquette of making a cooperative storytelling experience with your friends through any tabletop RPG you have. And if that sounds really cool to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button, the like button, the bell notification button, the follow button, slam dunk it into the goalpost, and let's get right on into it and start talking about dice etiquette. I'm gonna split this video up into 3 different sections. The first one being, what are the dice you have and how are you gonna use them? The second one being, what is the etiquette the DM should show? And the third one being, what is the etiquette a player should show? Now, it should show 2 separate words that shouldn't be mashed together in a weird conglomeration. Yes, my mouth doesn't work like that, so get used to it. Anyways, on to the rest of the point. This is a very subjective video, and it depends heavily on the DM and the party. So take it with a grain of salt as I explain what I'm basing my kind of etiquettes and rules off of. As a quick bit of context, the basis for my etiquette rules are really based upon how I play D&D and tabletop RPGs, which is a cooperative storytelling, narrative-driven, character-building, exploration founded game where you really get to explore the world, understand your characters, and understand the surroundings around you. Oftentimes, and I'll explain this more in detail, failure is actually a good thing in this kind of situation, right? There are other formats of play where the DM is actively participating against the players, and in these kinds of parties, people are more okay with perhaps fudging rolls because it's a survival game. It's all about fighting the horde of goblins, taking down the demi-lich, and defeating the dungeon once and for all to be heroes of the land. And sometimes you might fudge, min-max to an extreme degree, or flat out change your roll a little bit depending on the situation. Of course, talk to your DM, talk to your players, and see what the vibe is around. I'm going to be telling this story from my personal point of view, which is narrative, story-driven, and character-based, right? So that's how you should take the rest of this video. Let's talk about dice. Here's the bad news. You guys won't be able to see my dice. They're all green, and the green screen is behind me, and putting them up closer to the camera makes them look even worse. What I did, I found a picture of my dice and put them right up here for you guys to take a look at. First tip in getting dice, and most of them are about $7 for like a set of 7. Find dice you like that vibe with your character and that you're gonna enjoy rolling. That is my first tip for you guys. I got these dice because they reminded me of my first druid character, and I love them. I've been using them for years, and they're just great. They're not weighted to the best of my knowledge. They don't have any biases to them, and they just work really well so that I can. And I enjoy looking at them kind of roll. And I enjoy hearing them click clack. I'm a little bit of a dice globbin, so. Anyways, let me tell you what these dice are clockwise, starting from the top, all right? At the top, we have our D10. It goes from 1 to 10, and it can be used quite frequently for things like health and damage. Then we have our D8. Once again, could be used for health and damage, and is used quite frequently, goes from 1 to 8. D6, health and damage, 1 to 6. D4, we're never gonna use that for health, thankfully. If we had a squishier mage, it'd be even worse, right? But D4s are oftentimes used for damage and magical effects that give like a little boost of damage, right? You might have a magic weapon that does 1d4 damage, so on and so forth. After that, we have part of our percentile die. This goes from 10 to 100 in increments of 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. And typically pairs up with a D10 to give you a roll of 69, a very nice and good roll, right? And after that, we have our D12, which is typically used for some weapons, and the health of barbarians, which is it just means barbarians are super tanky and we can get a lot more health on average. In the middle, we have our D20, which for Dungeons and Dragons is used for rolling for skills, attacks, etc., right? It's not really used so much for anything like health or damage. Now, different systems utilize these dice differently. I have a bias towards my best friend, the D20. Mwah. Because this guy gets me through everything in Dungeons and Dragons 5e and Pathfinder. As an example, have I been knocked out and I need to roll some death saving throws? Get a d20 out. Do I need to dodge a giant fireball coming at me? Get a d20 out. Do I need to sniff a potion to see whether or not it's been poisoned? Get a d20 out. Am I trying to get some free food at a bar with my charisma? Get a d20 out. Everything besides doing the physical damage and making my stats and leveling up my health really requires a d20. So d20 is my best friend. There are other games that require the percentile system. As an example, Call of Cthulhu, which requires you to roll the two d10s, the incremental d10 and the normal d10, to get a number between 1 to 100. A fun little fact about Call of Cthulhu, you actually want to get below your number. If you have a 70 photography skill in Call of Cthulhu and you roll a 53, you've successfully taken a photo of whatever you're taking a photo of. That being said, if you roll a 71, you have then failed taking the photo. It might be blurry, grainy, etc. It's up to your DM how they do the failures, right? And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And some games require you to roll multiple d6. I know that there is like a very Lasers and Feelings as an example makes you roll up to 4d6 depending on your situation for the roll, and it's a more of a narrative focus rather than a flat out hit and miss kind of focus, right? So depending on the system, you're going to use a lot of different dice, and depending on your character in 5e and other games, you're going to be using a lot more different dice. So make sure you know the rules and just get yourself a basic set of 7 dice, in my personal opinion, because you'll have access to pretty much every dice you need for most any game. Then there's games like Star Wars that use their specialized dice. I'm just like, I'm going to ignore that for now. All right, DMs, let's talk etiquette. First and foremost, you are setting up the rules for how to roll. And in today's age, we typically have a different format than we used to. When I used to play in my high school days, it was typically in front of people where we all had our own set of dice and we all rolled our dice. Nowadays, a lot of games are coming out to be played on Discord, to be played on D&D Beyond, to be played on Owlbear and Roll20. As such, you need to make the executive choice of, are people going to be limited to a certain rolling system, like the in-house rolling system of Roll20 or D&D Beyond, or can they roll behind the computer screen for their physical dice? Some people love hearing that clicky-clacky sound of dice, and I don't blame them because I love it a lot myself. And some people are okay with using the bots. But you as DM have to set that rule and have to follow it yourself. Every house system will give you like an option to keep your rule secret, and as a DM, you're going to keep all your rules secret, and we'll talk about why later on. But you have to make sure you follow the same rules. It is only fair, right? If you have a Discord bot, make your own Discord channel. That's for yourself and for your own roles. But, you know, make sure that you do that. Personally, I let my players roll however they want. If they want to roll using the Discord bot, there's a Discord bot in my channel. If they want to roll using their physical dice, they could do that. I understand this sounds great. I trust my players enough to let them kind of go ham on that. Rule 2 should be obvious. Keep your rolls secret for eternity. And I'm going to explain why. As DMs, we will make mistakes. We will put monsters that are too weak to fight the party as the final boss of the dungeon. We will put monsters that are too strong for the party in the middle of a dungeon. We're going to make that NPC that is just the bar that's supposed to be a guard way too strong and accidentally kill all the players. And that's a given, right? We make mistakes. We are human. We are DMs, whatever. What does that mean, though? That means occasionally, without breaking immersion, we're going to have to fudge some rolls. Let me give you an example. You have a 4-player party, a fighter, a paladin, a mage or wizard, and let's say a ranger, right? And as they're fighting, the wizard gets hit and gets put down to 1 HP, and they're fighting a big old minotaur, right? Now, the fighter hasn't placed himself in front of the mage recently, the paladin didn't get the aggro, and the ranger's too far to be in the minotaur's range of attack. So the minotaur's gonna go and attack the wizard again, right? The wizard has 1 HP. This is a big old buff minotaur that just got a nat 20 on him. That wizard's dead, man. But you as the DM can go, all right, what am I gonna do? I'm going to say that roll was a 5. The players will never know. You're going to say that roll was a 5, plus the 6 the Minotaur might have had for its attack, an 11. So it actually ties the wizard. That moment is a great relief for the wizard, and depending on what happens next turn, you still might hit the wizard anyways. As an example, the paladin comes in, does lay on hands, and heals the wizard, then the Minotaur might shift focus to the fighter if the fighter comes in and stabs the Minotaur, right? Or if the paladin just does lay on hands and the fighter kind of cowers away and takes a health potion, then maybe the wizard gets hit, but now they have more health to tank another hit, right? You've now given a level of suspense and a level of gratitude and a level of relief without taking away the immersion of the game itself. The Minotaur is too strong, for sure, but you've messed the roll in to really give the players a moment to gather themselves and get their counterattack going. That is what it means to be a DM, knowing when to balance the rolls and when to give the players a little bit of leniency, or when to give your monster an extra attack or two. Let's say your players are just smacking this Minotaur around. They're level 10 players at a level 7 Minotaur or something. They're just smacking this Minotaur like no tomorrow. What if the Minotaur has a really cool rage function they never knew about, but you as DM just made up? Hey man, have fun with it. Go crazy, but be responsible. You want to provide a challenge, not necessarily guaranteed lethality. My personal rule when it comes to lethality in a D&D game or any tabletop RPG is that if a player is being excessively stupid, they have no excuse, and if the dice or the situation is calling for a player to be knocked out, then that's okay. So as an example, if that wizard had not been healed and the paladin and the fighter did nothing, and the Minotaur was still focusing on the wizard, that's the fault of the party now. You gave him one chance, the wizard now might get knocked out with an honest roll. All right, DMs, this is my last and most important rule if you are running a narrative, character-driven campaign. Don't be an ass. It sounds really simple, but in all reality, as DMs, we do have a level of power over this world that no one else has. And yes, sometimes we are asses, and the rule is don't be one. I'm gonna give you guys an example using a theoretical rogue, right? Let's say this rogue is sneaking through a building and needs to find a MacGuffin of some sort that is guarded by an unknown number of guards, right? The rogue is going through. The rogue rolls for stealth, and the rogue fails. Some DMs might go, oh, the guards find you, you're now surrounded by 3 guards, and you're being stabbed. Okay, that's a dick move. 100%. That is not how you want to do it. That immediately makes the players feel like they need to cheat, because any roll I make will lead to my death. So don't do that. Don't. Instead, let's say that rogue fails. And let's say you say they accidentally knock over a cup, but they get quickly back into hiding. Then you go, a guard starts wandering in from the nearby room. He says, anybody there? And looks around. He walks into the middle of the room, not noticing you immediately. What do? That adds suspense. The player messed up, but they know they're not getting punished unreasonably. This is a reasonable punishment. The guard is there, the guard is looking at him, but now the player has options of what to do. First and foremost, the player can now look over the guard. Do they have any keys hanging from their belt? Do they have any weapons they might be able to confiscate or steal? Do they have any weak spots in their armor? These are things now that the player can do for information grabbing. 2, the player now has the option to continue sneaking around, to hide in their location, to act upon this in any way they really want to. Do they want to leave? Do they want to go forward? What do they want to do? The player has a consequence that might make the next roll harder, but still allows them to really not get just insta-killed and insta-punished in a horrible fashion. This is something that you want to do as a DM. You want to give them a reasonable repercussion that will allow for actions afterwards. Let's say the rogue fails their second stealth roll to leave, then maybe the guard notices them and shoots an arrow at them. The guard might not know their face, but the guard then knows there's an intruder, knows where they are, knows generally what they look like, maybe the size, shape, etc. Maybe they know it's a dwarf, or maybe they know it's a halfling, etc., right? The guard now has more information, but it's not 3 guards just stabbing some dude randomly, right? And that is the most important part. Don't be an ass as a DM. Give reasonable consequences that help to enhance and provide suspense to the current situation. Don't just say, you failed and as such you're being attacked, or you failed and as such the worst outcome happens. A critical fail, if you do those rolls, that might be its own thing, but if it's a normal failure, guys, don't be an ass. Give your players a great situation for them to work through, a harder situation for them to work through, or of course just provide a level of threat that isn't immediately going to take them down. Actually, one more thing for DMs real quick. Set a session 0 and explain your expectations. This is always going to help when it comes to dice etiquette, because in reality, you're going to be saying this is a high lethality game where there will be no fudging of the dice and you might die quickly. Or you're going to say, hey guys, in my personal experience, I don't let players die unless they do something excessively stupid and the dice just aren't having a good day with them that day. No, set expectations, have a session 0. That is actually the most important tip. Next to don't be an ass. All right, players, let's talk about our etiquette. The first one is really simple. Listen to your DM on how you're going to roll for the game, especially if it's an online game. Some DMs are going to say, I want you to use online dice that I can see the result of, and that's valid. Sometimes DMs have had cheating players in the past, and they don't want to deal with that again. Sometimes they just want transparency in general, and sometimes they want to use these rolls to actually make future encounters and future consequences more relevant and more in depth, and that's going to be really cool, right? Secondly, if your DM says roll however you want, don't give anyone flack for rolling however they want. If someone rolls physically, don't give them flack for it. Don't say, oh, they're probably cheating because I'm rolling digitally. Don't. Respect your players and respect your DM. Rule 2 for players. Try to encourage a session 0 if one has not happened. A session 0 is basically an interview between players and DMs to know what's going on. And DMs, you should be running one by default. Session 0s are extremely important. In a session 0, a DM might say, hey guys, I'm running a narrative, story-driven campaign full of character growth. And then you, as the player, might ask, awesome, I'm really excited for that. How are consequences typically doled out? I want to know how, if I fail a stealth roll, am I just going to be spotted by guards or whatnot? And then DM will respond, I am actually a little harsh with these fails, so you might have a harsher response. Or the DM might say, listen, reality, you're not going to die or face any dire consequences that will be life-threatening unless you really mess up or you're doing something extensively stupid. At that point, you have a basis understanding of what the game is going to be like. So you might need to min-max a bit, or you're going to need to, or you could be really free to really make any character you want. And hey, the DM might end up saying something along the lines of, it's a high lethality dungeon crawler where you're probably going to die 2 sessions in. And in that case, if you're just there to hang out with friends, make a disposable character, or say, it ain't my type, I'll be here to listen in on the background though, Just have fun, enjoy yourself, and make sure you get the information you need from a session 0. If your DM was honest with you in session 0, be honest with them. If your DM said cheat a little bit, okay, cheat a little bit. But if your DM says you're not gonna need to cheat because I'm giving you reasonable repercussions and I'm not gonna be extremely lethal towards you, give them the benefit of the doubt. See what's gonna happen, be honest, and if the DM breaks their promises, talk to them about it after the game. Say, hey, listen, DM, I want further explanation on what you mean by XYZ or why this happened. It felt quite unfair, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding everything on what's going to happen. So that's really the last bit of it. And of course, rule 4, don't be an ass, but that's assumed. DMs need that a little bit more because DMs have unlimited power, Palpatine style, but those are kind of like my big tips for you as a player. But yeah. Okay, so I got off on a few tangents there, and I didn't specifically speak about the dice all the time, but in general, I think I got upon rolling etiquette in general and playing etiquette, so it kind of makes it fine with the dice theme of today, right? So I'm gonna give myself a pass on that one. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to hit that subscribe button, bell notification, yada yada. Comment down below what rule do you think is most useful, and what do you have any rules that you would actually add on to that rule set when it comes to etiquette, dice etiquette, and rolling etiquette? Tell us in the comments. I'd love to hear. Anyways, guys, I'm headed out. Y'all stay safe and stay Botanist Cool. I'll see you later. Bye, everyone.